Hi, I'm John, and this is the 2025 Honda Civic Sport Touring Hybrid Hatchback VTEC DOHC A-Spec Quadrifoglio Elegante. So in conclusion, while my BMW was a fantastic car and had a little more drama than the Honda Civic, the Honda Civic overall is, I'd say, a better package. The power delivery on a daily basis is better, and it's honestly just a really, really solid car. I bought this car in Nardo Putty Primer Gray, or as Honda calls it, Urban Gray Pearl. It actually really has some nice gold fleck in the sunlight. Coming from a BMW, I was worried that people might not know that I'm a complete douchebag, but friends and family told me people will still know even if you're in a Honda Civic, so that was reassuring. So my car history is fairly short. I had a 80s Honda Civic as my first car. My next car was a Acura Integra GSR from the late 90s, and from there I bought a Subaru BRZ the first year they came out. I had to lemon law that after 2 years, unfortunately, but it was a very fun car while it lasted. And then after that, I bought a 2 Series BMW, a M Sport 228i with the track handling package. And I kept that for a decade before buying this. So, car history is pretty short, but I think some fun cars in there. So let me talk about why I bought the Honda Civic. I really wanted something with 4 doors. I really wanted something with a hatchback, which is hard to find these days. And while this isn't a true hatchback, it does give you a ton of room back there. It's got a huge dumper, one to rival the matriarch of your family. And then now that they finally brought the hybrid here from Europe, it seemed like the perfect car in that it gets really good gas mileage, but also still has a little bit of sportiness and is a little fun to drive. It's obviously not a Canyon Carver, but it has really good handling and really good steering. So, and most of the technology is there, and I really didn't want a bigger car. I didn't want something the size of a Camry or an Accord. So the only other option really was a Prius, and Toyota made those so hard to get, and honestly, I think that styling is not going to age very well, so Honda seemed like the right choice for me. And also, I'm kind of just a Honda guy. I've had Hondas over the years. The other thing that's nice is, technology-wise, coming from a 10-year-old car, even though it was a BMW, there are a ton of features in this car that just didn't exist in that car. I bought the top spectrum of this because I wanted wireless Apple CarPlay and the Bose sound system, which is surprisingly good. The safety suite of stuff, I could kind of take or leave. It's nice to have. I haven't used the adaptive cruise control too much, but hopefully that's solid. It would have been nice if the car had ventilated seats, but come on, man, it's a Civic. Surprisingly, I have to say the power delivery on this car is really good, and I think that comes down to the direct drive. Coming from an 8-speed turbo BMW, if you had that car in Sport Plus, it was spooled up and ready to go at all times and had a ton of punch. But if you had it in Econ or anything below Sport, it really didn't have much punch immediately. It had a lot of lag, and you really had to stomp on the gas on the freeway, and what would happen is you'd get like a 1/1000, 2/1000, and then it would feel like you stepped on a roller skate. I feel like in this car, you don't feel that. This car drives really nicely, and the power is kind of always there because it drives more like an electric car. The direct drive always has power on tap, and it's not as much power, and it's not as dramatic, but ultimately it's a little more linear and a little more predictable. It is honestly just a really comfortable car to drive, and just like the BMW, it has modes, so in different modes the throttle pedal is a little more touchy, but it's not as big a difference as the BMW. Comfort to sport was a huge difference. In this car, it's subtle, but it's still there. A little touchier pedal, a little tighter steering in sport, but honestly it feels good even in Econ, and I feel like you can drive it in Econ most of the time, whereas that was not true of the BMW. I'm also pleasantly surprised by the brakes. I know hybrid brakes can be kind of a mess. I've driven a number of Toyota hybrids where the brakes were really not linear. You'd get kind of nothing, 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 and then all of a sudden it would bite. And this car, you don't have that. I wouldn't even know it was a hybrid if you didn't tell me, other than the weird whirring noise that it makes. But Linear brakes are obviously very important because it gives you more confidence in how you drive, and the M Sport brakes in my BMW were much better brakes and much touchier. But honestly, it's not a big move coming over from that. This is really a sharp car when it comes to that. I don't feel like I'm having a hard time modulating the brakes. Also, the regenerative paddles are great downhill. You can control how much it slows down a hill, which the BMW had 0 engine braking. With an 8-speed, it would coast at 70 miles an hour down a hill, where now I can coast below 45. And as far as the steering goes, honestly, I think this has a more connected front end than the BMW did. The BMW went exactly where you placed it. It was a video game in that way. You would know exactly where it was going, but you didn't have a lot of feel. I couldn't always tell where the front wheels were. And obviously the dynamics between front wheel drive and rear wheel drive are going to be different. But this car dynamically steers and drives really well. You really have a good sense of the road. And I think part of that's the suspension. I could really soften up the suspension in the BMW, whereas this just has one setting. It's not adaptive. But I will say the suspension is really good. You feel the road enough to where you know exactly where the car is, but by the same token, it does soak up bigger bumps. I think it might actually have less secondary body movement than my BMW did, but the BMW isolated you a little more. So for me, I think this setup is preferable. Other people might have a really different take on that. I think it just depends on your driving style. Honestly, there's only a couple of downsides that I've found to this car so far. One of the biggest ones, I would say, is the seats. The seats are plenty comfortable, but coming from the BMW, those seats were amazing. Those seats swaddled your tuchus in a way that is usually reserved for kings or pharaohs. So while this car isn't bad, it's just not on the same level. But it's still a really good seat. I feel like if it had the front bolster that BMWs have to support your thighs a little better, I wouldn't be saying that. But honestly, aside from that, and aside from it not having some of the drama that the BMW engine has, I really don't miss anything. It feels plenty quick. It's just a good everyday car. It's just a great car that you can get in and you don't have to think about, and all the controls are in the right place, and you drive it and you kind of don't worry about things. Which, in this modern era where everything is a little overdone, that's saying a lot.
Useless fact, the Civic Hybrid gets 7 miles per gallon better than the first Civic to come to America, but is about as fast as a Porsche from the same era, so compared to 50-year-old cars, this thing is amazing.
Oh, I would drive 500 miles and I would drive 500 more just to be the man that drove 1,000 miles for MPGs and more.